Charter Local Edition with your host, Dana Cowley.
Welcome to Charter Local Edition from the Capitol Building in beautiful Helena. Today my guest is Representative Austin Knudsen. He's the Speaker of the House from District 34. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Now,
appreciate it.
For those of us who aren't familiar with you or your district, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Austin Knudsen. I'm the Speaker of the House. I represent House District 34, which is the extreme northeast corner of Montana.
All right.
I represent all of Sheridan County, all of Daniels County, most of Roosevelt County, and a pretty good portion of Valley County.
And what's your history with the state? Are you born and raised and educated here?
I am, yeah. I'm a native of the Culbertson and Bainville area, a family farm and ranch kid. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then University of Montana Law School, and before that to Montana State University. So Montana through and through.
All the way. Then describe the demographics of your constituents, please.
Sure.
Your people you represent.
Yeah, very rural. I've got a handful of populous areas. I've got the town of Plentywood, Scobie, Culbertson, Bainville, a little bit of the town of Glasgow, but mostly rural. A lot of geography, a lot of real estate, a lot of farm ground, a lot of ranch ground.
So when you're serving your constituents, what's the number one thing you want to do for them in this specific session?
We want to balance the budget. I think it's important that not just my constituents, but I mean, as Speaker of the House, all the constituents in Montana understand where we are with the budget in Montana. I think there were a lot of promises made during the gubernatorial election, during the campaign cycle, and I think it's important that people know where we really are in the state with the budget, and that we're going to have to work hard to balance that budget this session.
And as Speaker of the House, define for us exactly what your job duties are and how that blends into accomplishing that goal of getting that budget balanced.
Sure. Well, as Speaker of the House, I'm kind of the boss. I'm a glorified.
Good to be boss.
Sometimes. I'd say I'm a glorified administrator. I mean, really, what my job is to maintain decorum on the House floor. That's the biggest thing. I schedule all the bills for the House floor. I run the floor sessions. I make sure the House does its business efficiently, professionally, civilly. I'm also in charge of, I appoint all the committees in the House. I schedule all the bills for the House floor. I schedule all the bills to their committees. So it's kind of a big job. I'm in charge of a lot of, it's kind of like herding cats some days.
But and this year with the financial challenges that are a little greater than what you've seen in recent years, that job might be a little more important then. Yeah,
this is certainly, so this is my fourth session. I'm termed out after this. This is certainly a different sessional situation than we've had before. My first three sessions, we had huge budget surpluses. When the legislature left town in 2011, we had over $500 million in the bank. When we left town in 2013, it was over $350 million. Last session in 2015, when we left town, there was over $300 million in the bank. This session, that budget surplus is gone.
Your pads run thin.
Our pad is run very thin, and we're scrambling to balance the state budget. I mean, as most of the listeners I think know, we have a constitutional obligation. We have to pass a balanced budget in Montana.
Oh yes.
We can't deficit spend. We're not allowed to spend more money than the state takes in.
And the voters expect that.
They absolutely expect that, and we expect that from ourselves, and we're going to do that. But it's definitely more challenging this session than what I've seen in the previous three, with no cushion really there to work with. We're really having to dig in the couch cushions for loose change here.
I wish you the very best with that. That is a tall order. And let's talk about coal and some of your other natural resources. Montana is so rich with these opportunities. Yeah, well, we're the treasure state. I mean, that was our name historically, and I think it's still a great name for us. We're blessed with lots of coal, lots of oil, lots of timber, lots of minerals. Unfortunately, we've got a situation where, I mean, for decades, literally decades, coal has been a huge part of our state budget. I'm not sure people understand that, but coal brings in a huge amount of tax revenue to the state of Montana, to this building in Helena, for us to administer state government at all levels. And the fact is, we've had a war on coal for the last 8 years, and it has really, really almost decimated our coal industry in the state of Montana. And I think it's really contributed to a lot of our budget woes this session. So
we're really looking this session to take a hard look at, Colstrip. Colstrip 1 and 2, that electricity generating facility down in Colstrip. It's very important to the state as an infrastructure resource. Well, look, it's also important to the people of Colstrip. That's a very important town. It's an important job source. And if those jobs go away, I mean, we've got a real problem in Colstrip where people are going to be out of work.
Well, and not just there, like you say, these are big dollars that go into things like schools and
Absolutely.
public services and infrastructure
Absolutely.
and budgets. So
Yeah.
those, and it's when you're working with energy, whether it be nuclear, coal, hydroelectricity, those are usually better wage family jobs.
Absolutely.
These are usually
Yeah.
not minimum wage jobs,
Yeah.
and so that is another impact.
It is, and what we've seen from the University of Montana Bureau of Economic Research, they've shown that, I mean, it's true that Montana's unemployment rate has stayed pretty low, but the problem we've got is that we've shed lots of those high-paying natural resources jobs that you were just talking about, and we've replaced them with a lot lower wage retail jobs, service industry jobs. So, I mean, when we say we've got a low unemployment rate in Montana, yes, that's true, but they're not the really good high-paying wage jobs that we want to see in the state of Montana.
Well, and that's tough to maintain and retain your young people.
It is.
And it doesn't do much for your tax base. So, you know, really finding that livable wage job is really such a rub.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.
We really appreciate your time. And as speaker, I wish you the very best with this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you watching. This is Austin Knutson, the Speaker of the House. I'm Dana Cowley, and this is Charter Local Edition.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It's fun.
Charter Local Edition with your host, Dana Cowley.
Welcome to Charter Local Edition from the Capitol Building in Helena. Today's interview guest is Senator Mary McNally. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
She represents Senate District 24 in Billings, and tell us a little bit about the people that you serve.
Oh, I represent a wonderful area in downtown Billings, and I live in my district. It stretches from North Park and includes a big chunk of downtown and the hospital corridor, Tree Streets, MSUB, and it goes out to 24th Street, everything north of Grand. So it's a real mix of the urban area, different types of neighborhoods, North Park, some on the West End, and some diversity of people, and it's just great.
And you did mention you represent the hospital district, and so you have an interest and concern both at the state and the federal level about what's going to be happening with healthcare.
Yes, it's a big industry in Billings, and it employs a lot of people, and they take very good care of many people. So, yeah, we're keeping an eye on that. It's most of the action is obviously going on at the federal level right now, and we're not driving that bus, but we're paying attention because it will have important local impacts, whatever happens.
In your district, what impact did the Affordable Care Act bring? And then if it's repealed, how will it change?
Well, the Affordable Care Act basically dropped the uninsured rate in Montana from 20% to more like 7%. So a lot more people were able to access and get health care. And that was a huge deal. And I'm hopeful that those people aren't just going to be cut out again. I don't think that makes any sense, and it would impact a lot of local residents in Billings and the hospitals and reimbursements and everything. So I think it's important that whatever happens with the Affordable Care Act, that it be thoughtful. And I hope that happens in Washington. We'll see.
And this year, the budget is a little tighter in our state than it has been in recent years, and you're working on a budget committee.
I am. For the first time, I'm serving on Senate Finance and Claims, and so I'm learning a lot. It's a steep learning curve, but the budget is tight this session. One thing I like to make sure people understand is that we're really not in a crisis. Some of the surrounding states have had a much tougher time in terms of their budget and had to do very dramatic cutbacks. We haven't had to do that. We had a good rainy day fund. So and the blip, I think, is going to be, or the issue is fairly short term. We think that 2019 we're going to be in good shape again. So it's an issue. It's a matter of trying to deal with a shortfall right now, and yes, we're going to have to make some cuts. I am hopeful that we'll do some revenue enhancements as well, because without doing that, the cuts will have to be a lot deeper. But I'm hopeful, and I'm working on the assumption that we can do what we need to do without doing long-term damage to Montana families, or just it's a short-term
approach. As you mentioned
the
before.
Scalpel instead of the axe. So well, that's my hope.
The governor has proposed some tax increases. You mentioned that perhaps this revenue shortfall might be short-term. It's always hard to tell with the forecasting. You just don't know. And then the Republicans, of course, want no new taxes. What do you feel about where that need comes in? Do we need a small tax increase? Where should it come? What's your opinion on that?
The governor has proposed a couple of revenue enhancement ideas. He's also proposed cuts. There's a whole package of cuts that have already sort of been accepted. I think we need a balance, and we haven't really had the discussion on the revenue side yet. I think there's some bills coming very soon where we will have that discussion. But for me, it's about some balance and trying not to, as I say, do anything that's going to really damage Montana families long term. So a little belt tightening now, but I do believe we'll be in much better shape in 2019.
You're serving on the Budget Committee now and working on those things. You're also on the Senate Energy and Telecommunications Committee. And can you share what you're doing for the citizens in that arena?
Sure. That's a long-term interest of mine. I was on the Energy Committee in the House, and I've been on in the Senate. And I'd say that the main issues this session are around renewables, particularly net metering. There are a lot of bills coming up about net metering, which is a very popular issue for most Montanans. There's a lot of support for that out there. There are some issues in terms of how it gets implemented. And there are a lot of bills coming up trying to restrict it, which I'm a supporter of renewable energy as well as sort of an all of the above. We have a lot of natural resources in Montana that we need to use. But I want us to keep moving in the direction of renewables as well. The other thing I think that is a big deal this session is coal strip, and the changes that are coming with units 1 and 2, and what's going to happen with those, and particularly what's going to happen, the impacts on the community. And so there's a number of bills that are trying to look at that and trying to address that, and I think that's very important. So I generally, support that and would like to see us come up with some ideas that help the people there.
I have time for just one more quick question.
Okay.
Most of the work on your committees is for the good of the whole, all the citizens of Montana. But what specifically would you like to do this session just for your constituents back home in Billings?
I have a couple of bills I'm working on. One is already out there. I was trying to make sure that with insurance, that people don't, when they have $0 claims, if they have a claim that goes into the insurance company and it costs the insurance company no money, that's not held against them.
Oh, that's nice.
It would be nice, but it's been an issue, and it's been an issue in Billings after all the hailstorms, and so hopefully that bill will make it through. I just think that's very consumer friendly, and most people don't even realize that happens.
No, and I think on the just on the superficial level, not being an expert or intimately involved in that, it just sounds like good common sense too.
I think it is.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you joining us and taking the time, and we wish you the best of luck in what you're doing for the citizens.
Thank you,
This is our Senator Mary McNally. I'm Dana Cowley, and this is Charter Local Edition.
Hey Kelty, what's the first thing we do when we get in the car?
Close the door.
Okay, Kelty, what's the second thing we do when we get in the car?
Buckle up.
All right. Hey, I'm Representative Tom Woods from Bozeman. And as a parent, sometimes you have to let kids have their way. But your kid's safety should never be compromised. Life as a parent is full of give and take. But seatbelt safety for kids is not up for negotiation. Don't give up until they buckle up.
Charter Local Edition with your host, Dana Cowley.
Hello, welcome to Charter Local Edition. Today we're in Helena's beautiful state capital. My guest is Representative Daniel Zolnikoff. He represents the 45th District in Billings, Montana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For those who are watching from other parts of our beautiful state, tell us a little bit about the people you represent who elected you.
So I represent a really great district. Obviously they elected me 3 times, so I can't complain.
Gotta love them.
I appreciate them, and it's the west part of the Heights, covers Skyview, the airport, and all the way to Reberg Ranch. So it's a pretty good area. I can't complain.
Do you have a mixed demographic group?
I wouldn't say too much. I mean, the interesting thing about my district is it's got a lot of people who grew up in Billings and a lot of people who moved into Billings from rural areas. So that's the diversity of, you get an urban and rural mentality in that part of the Heights.
You mentioned as we were preparing for our interview that you like to go talk to your people, you do genuinely love them, and you knock on their doors.
Yes.
So when you do that, what are they sharing with you?
So just to touch on that really quick, in the 3 campaigns, I've literally now spent a year of my life between them all added up together, knocking on doors. And that's a lot of time talking to folks. So a lot of them, it's more disappointment within the political system, our inability to reach out. They don't know what we're doing. And then there's basic issue complaints like property taxes, things like that. But a lot of it's outreach. Like, we want to hear more what's going on, and what they think of in politics is negative. So I think it's our job now to do a little bit more positive messaging on what we're accomplishing.
Well, and that's getting more fragmented as the media changes, more social media, different mechanisms. That's a real challenge for your comm team to get your word out about what you're doing too. So what message do you want to share with them today?
So a lot of what we've even passed and worked on this session has been pretty positive. I work on a lot of privacy legislation regarding technology such as cell phones, devices, and emails. And so we're putting standards that the government cannot access your information without warrants. That's really good protections. It allows law enforcement to get the information if they need it, but it protects people to make sure that there's a due process. I mean, that's big, and we worked on that together. That passed from both sides. Right? Both sides of the House supported it. That's a big win.
And that's something, as you've done all of that hard work knocking on doors, your people told you they wanted.
Yeah.
They wanted folks to stay away, you know, laissez-faire, just let me be. And, you know, the privacy factors into that. A lot of times it feels like you give your life away when you put apps on your phone. And, you know, you want those apps for a variety of reasons. But anything that the state can do on that level when that's more of an international problem?
I know that there are other legislators looking at the whole issue of data ownership and who does it belong to, who doesn't not belong to. Germany, I think, has a great model, but they also have horrible history on government accessing and obtaining all their data and using it to basically influence an entire society the way they wanted in the Eastern Germany era. It was 40 phones could be tapped at a time, and the Stasi controlled the entire country. So they have pretty good standards. I think we could learn from them.
And then this session, anything particular you'd like to do? Your greatest goals for this?
So those 2 privacy bills were really big, but I'm also chairing the Energy and Telecom Committee. So we just pushed out a great E911 infrastructure bill, emergency 911, and there's a large pot of money that is from people's cell phone bills and landline bills that will basically be used to help E911 infrastructure. So when you call your local authorities in an emergency, it will go to the right individuals, and hopefully they'll show up in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
That infrastructure is important.
And I do think Montana expects that kind of service. You know, this is a state that prides itself with taking care of their own and being independent and having reliable first responder response is just part of the mentality.
That's exactly right. Like, we are elected to take care of who elects us. And this issue isn't exciting, I would say. It's not like a political one that gets all in the papers, but it's really important. And so
If it's you calling 911, yes.
Exactly.
Because if you're a Montana resident, you don't call over nothing.
Exactly. I can't campaign saying, though, oh, I'm going to make E911 better. Like, that's not as interesting, but people are happy when we do that. And literally, like, we're elected to take care of our constituents across the state. And that type of legislation is amazing because the money was already there. Everybody had a compromise. And it fixes the state so it's all in the same technology, basically. So one city's not off from another city, so they can communicate better in emergencies. Again, no one really seems to, it's not the biggest political issue until you call 911 and you need it to work. And then people are happy when it works.
You mentioned a little bit, you've been through 3 campaign cycles. Most recently, what were your campaign promises and what you hope to deliver to make good on those?
So I don't do promises. I came from a generation who really was not happy with politics. So I say what my goals are, of course, or where my stances are. But I don't say I'm going to get this done or get this done because really it's impossible to know. You got the House, you got the Senate, you have a very diverse body. So making a promise, I feel, is very inauthentic, and that is what people think of as politicians, is we're very inauthentic human beings who are out there for our own agenda. So I'm not going to lie and say, well, I can get this done, because honestly, I don't know what is possible or what is not possible in this body. One thing I guess one of the big campaign promises I have made is to clearly communicate with my constituents. I mean, I have worked very hard the last few sessions and this one to keep everybody informed. I have a pretty solid Facebook following and Twitter following of thousands of people across the state, and I just try to let them know what we're working on, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, big picture all the time. Because you'd be amazed sometimes. It's like we don't know what you guys are doing.
Well, that's worked very effectively for Donald Trump. He does use the social media. He does use modern communications, and so I think more politicians reaching out to people that are interested in connecting is a good way to go.
I completely agree. I would say there's 2 types of politicians. Ones who don't want you to know what's going on or what they're up to, and then others who want you to know what's going on and what they're up to. So I'm trying to be the second one.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you for your time to come and be with us and share this, and good luck to you.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm Dana Cowley. This is our Representative Daniel Zolnikoff. He represents District 45 in Billings, and this is Charter Local Edition. Thanks for watching. We got to talk about what you did.
Charter Local Edition with your host, Dana Cowley.
Welcome to Charter Local Edition from the Capitol Building in Helena. Today my guest is Senator Cynthia Wolken. She represents District 48 in Missoula. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your time.
Yes.
Now tell us a little bit about your district and the people who elected you.
Sure. So I represent Western Missoula City and County. So I have a really good mix of some of the downtown areas of Missoula and some of the rural parts south of Highway 90 and down back through. So it's a nice little slice of Western Missoula City and County.
And then you have a background in law. You have a law degree. You've done some criminal justice. You've done some family law. And you're working on some bills here that would have an impact in those arenas.
Yes, they would. I actually had the pleasure of serving on the Finance Committee last session too, on the subcommittee that oversees our public safety agency budgets, like the Attorney General, the Judiciary, the Department of Corrections, and we really became concerned about some of the growing costs of the justice system, and it's all funded out of the general fund, which is just taxpayer money, and so we really wanted to take a look at how we can be more efficient, improve public safety, and really start to bring those costs down and figure out why we're spending so much money on our system.
And so as you've looked at it, you're moving some bills forward, and you believe if they get through, they could save a few taxpayer dollars.
Yes, we do. And it's a process called justice reinvestment. It's been very successful in other states. We analyzed over the past 18 months since the last legislative session, we analyzed all of our data about who's in our prisons and jails, why they're there, and came up with about 12 bills to move forward. And the primary issues that emerged were the rising cost of jails and prisons, and then the recidivism rate. So people who are on probation keep returning to prison over and over. possibly not for a new crime. In a lot of cases, it's just for a technical violation or something else that maybe we could address in a jail rather than sending somebody to prison for years. And the third thing is to address the growing impact of substance abuse. So opiate addiction, meth addiction. What we're doing now is sending someone to prison, which is $40,000 a year at a minimum, and pretty much the most expensive thing you can do with somebody, especially if they actually just need treatment or help so they stop going further in the criminal justice system. So these bills are designed to address that, keep us safer, cut down on crime, and to save money to taxpayers.
So in a budget tight year, that certainly catches people's ear. You know, in a year when the legislature is flush, saving dollars, you know, is a little less of a priority. But this year, I think that could be quite well received.
I think so too. And, you know, these, again, this has sort of been done in other states. We wouldn't be recreating the wheel. And Idaho recently did justice reinvestment, and their Department of Corrections, I think, maybe for the first time, actually returned money to the general fund. And to see sort of results like that are really kind of inspiring. If we could have the same outcome in Montana, that'd be great. We're in the opposite position now, where the corrections budget goes over by this year. It was about $3 million. And so to be having them within their budget and then possibly returning money out of it would just be a great thing.
Now, you've had the experience with the budget, with the finance, with the legal aspects. The governor has given his state of the state, talking about some possible tax increases. What's your opinion about that? How can we end up with the balanced budget we need to at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think, well, it's still pretty early in the process, but I think, you know, we are going to have some difficult decisions. You know, there's only two ways to get to the balanced budget. You either bring more revenue in or you cut something, and we don't want to cut the wrong thing. There are vital services that people depend on, you know, the elderly, the sick, the really critical programs. But there are also things that, you know, maybe are not the needs. Maybe there's some more of the wants that we're going to have to cut back on this session. And you know, I haven't, some of the tax increases I think are starting in the House. I haven't seen all the details, but I think it's something that we should all look at and see, you know, for infrastructure, for example, or the gas tax. There's lots of ideas floating around, but everyone's going to have to come together because, you know, we have to agree on it, and then the governor has to agree for us to leave. And so I'm confident we're going to get to a balanced budget.
And then do you feel you'll be going into a special session or running over?
You know, I think it's kind of too early to tell on that. I mean, I think if we can get where we need to go, it just depends how far. If the cuts go so far that they leave Montanans either, you know, cutting jobs, leaving seniors stranded, disabled children, that situation we can't have. So if it's a responsible, lean budget, I think so. But if we just come to loggerheads, then we might need to have a special session. And then, of course, we might need to anyway because of what's happening federally. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns about, you know, the Affordable Care Act and all of the things that we take direction from the federal government on anyway. So we might need to come back and deal with some of those things as well.
Oh yes, I mean, where you're really kind of ahead of the curve now, where that is, it's almost as if you have to have some open-ended stopgap things that can be modified once you get some final decisions coming out of the federal government,
right?
And then have to adapt on the state level, I'd imagine.
Yes,
so that's a unique and difficult challenge all in itself, right there, to not be able to do something concrete.
Yes, it is. It is a challenge of the legislature. The citizens decided in the Constitution that we would only meet 90 days every 2 years, and I think they like it like that. But you know, we have to adapt because, of course, policies and things are moving more than the 90 days. So we have to keep that in mind as we make policy here.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck with all your efforts. I hope this is a good session for you. And especially want to thank you for your time, to take time from what you're doing to come here and talk with us and share with your constituents the things you're doing for them. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And we appreciate you watching. This is Charter Local Edition in Helena, and my guest is Senator Cynthia Wolken.
Charter Local Edition has been an exclusive presentation of Charter Communications. View all episodes at localeditiononline.com.